Hi. In this little segment I wanted to give a brief overview of co-teaching strategies. They may already be familiar to many of you. They're not difficult to conceive or think of. In fact, you may be using a lot of these teaching structures in your classroom already. The question, I suppose, when you really come down to trying to implement these strategies is how do you use them in a way that includes another person, and then especially how do you use them so that you can maximize student learning or gain some advantage from using that other person. And that's a main part of what we're trying to do in this workshop. Is the idea is to rethink what you're doing, because we're used to thinking about being alone in a classroom without help. So we've grown accustomed to thinking about how we would do everything by ourselves on our own. But in this scenario, you have another person. How can you put them to work in a way that will maximally advantage your students, perhaps in ways that you hadn't considered before? In last year's workshop, I remember one of the teachers saying, I was able to try things that I've wanted to do for years, but hadn't been able to do before, but with the second person I could do it. So there's about 6 main strategies, and I'll run through them briefly. The first that I'm going to talk about is one teach, one observe. And in this model, one person essentially does the teaching, most of it, and runs the classroom and does the direction of things and probably did most of the planning and the assessing. The other person observes. But what you may not be thinking, because this is a little different than traditional professional internship, we really don't want, in this case, the professional intern to be observing the teacher necessarily. Could be observing the teacher in terms of their particular discourse moves, in other words, how many questions they ask, or how they ask questions, or how many times they interact with different students. They could be observing the teacher for that reason, but it's more likely actually they'll be observing students, because it makes a wonderful opportunity to see how attentive individual students are, where individual students go off track or start to lose focus, how different students perform. In this case, it really gives the teacher a chance to have an extra set of eyes to see what he or she can't see. I remember a number of years ago a teacher saying that she had her professional intern watch a particular student, and what she found out from that is the student behaved very well when she was moving around the room and getting closer and closer to him, but as soon as she had finished helping him and moved on to another student, he began misbehaving. And so that's one of the ways that you can use a professional intern to increase what you do in the classroom. And I wanted to say from this example too, these are data oriented. So your professional intern could learn how to be more analytical while helping you collect data that you couldn't collect before because you were too busy teaching, so that they can record events that are happening and that later can be analyzed and reflected on in order to make improvements in your class. And the teachers in the segments you're going to watch will have examples of how they used it in their classroom. And again, the challenge will be for you is to what can I do? What can I do in my particular classroom and rethink it so that I can take advantage of an opportunity like this. Later, when the professional intern is taken over the classroom, then that might reverse. That the teacher becomes the observer and collects data on students, or maybe on the professional intern, in terms of how they're performing, where they're moving in the classroom, what kind of things are they saying, who they're making eye contact with. And then that could be reported to, it could be useful for both actually. It could be useful for the professional intern, but it could also reveal things about the class. Another related technique is one teach, one assist. In this case, there's a teacher is probably doing most of the leading of the class, and the other person is matriculating around the classroom, helping individual students, providing support, assistance, evaluation. This can be invaluable for providing feedback to whoever's teaching. I remember a couple of years ago, one of the teachers said she was having the students write essays, and she had actually two teacher candidates in the classroom, and as the students were writing at their desks, those two teacher candidates were moving around the room and observing what the students were doing, and they were able to give her feedback very quickly that helped change the way she was teaching or giving instruction, or she was able to give more pointers or more support because of the feedback she got from the students. And the teacher made the statement that those essays came out much better because she was able to get that extra feedback. And there's all kinds of different ways to handle this. I know of a teacher who either he or the professional intern is always in the room, and if someone, for students who miss class, they come down, or if they fail a test, they come down to the classroom, and one or the other of them takes them in the teacher's office and does extra instruction, remediates in some way, and that's ongoing all the time. If students are absent, or they haven't done their homework, or they're a discipline problem, this is a great way for a professional intern or any teacher candidate to work one-on-one with the student. Helps them see how students think, and yet at the same time reduces the management problems. They don't have to deal with the whole class at once, so they're not distracted by management, and they can focus more on how students learn and how to support it. So one teach, one assist, and again at the end of the experience it can be reversed.